Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is our final. I'm so sad to see everyone go, actually. This has been a lot of fun, and thank you for your dedication and coming to our webinars for the last 5 times. So I should say 4 times. I'm Kim Traverso from the State Department of Education, and I am so honored to be working with Carol on this from Norwalk Public Schools. I will give her a moment to actually introduce herself. And also, if you wouldn't mind today putting your name, your school in the chat, we would love that so that we can have that documentation. The other thing is, too, is that Carol has offered her time, which time is so valuable to actually do drop-ins. And so if you are interested in signing up for the drop-ins, please put your email address in the chat as well so that we can record it and be able to send that out to you when she is scheduling those. So thank you. And we're ready to start. So Carol, can you post the actual PowerPoint? Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. The next drop-in session will be on May 7th. And if you haven't been invited yet, please put your email in the chat and we're happy to invite you. It's at 9 a.m. We hope to see you there for conversation about all the things we've been talking about and all the things you've been thinking about.
It's great. Thank you so much. And also, just so that you know, we will be putting the Google Docs with all the resources in the actual chat for you. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat. This is really supposed to be more interactive. So I would love it if you could actually either put your question or comment in the chat, or we also have something that is called Q&A, and it has a little box around it with a question mark. And if you want to put your question in there, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So let's get started. So again, as if you're new to this, I am actually always starting with this slide because I always want to show alignment with our state board strategic plan and how important that is. That our focus today will be on post-secondary pathways, which is on the bottom left. But we are also always looking at improving student outcomes, hearing student voice, and also making sure that we are connecting with our community providers and families so that we can actually make sure that our students are thriving. And of course, this involves educational workforce development as well. No, you can go ahead. You're right, Carol. Thank you. So our meeting objective today is really to focus on Tier 3. And it really is looking at the comprehensive support for students with complex needs or chronic needs. So this is more individualized and also this is more intensive. But we're still going to talk about how we should be very intentional because we need to support the need. And I'll get into a little bit more detail in the next slide. So some reflections for you today. I really want you to think about what are you doing in your buildings right now as a team around Tier 3? And where do you find that there may be some gaps? And is that program intervention strategy data driven? And what is that data based on? And that's going on the academic and behavioral side. Now, this totally aligns to our comprehensive school counseling framework because we're looking at those 3 domains: career, academic, and social emotional development. And we really want you to actually foundationally, Tier 1 is critical because that will inform our decision making around Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. Next slide. So the agenda today is again, we're going to really concentrate on Tier 3. but also we want to show you the alignment between the framework, the school counselor's framework, and also the state board plan. We will also provide you with some resources as usual, and some great Q&A at the end. Carol has a lot of information to share with you, and I think it will be an engaging conversation today. Next slide. So I also wanted to just let you know that this is not random acts here. This has actually been planned. If you all remember, in 2008, we had our first SRBI MTSS guidance, which is pretty old, right? And so we are working right now at the State Department to update that guidance. And so now we are really looking at cross sector. We have an internal team that is working from every division, from talent, special ed, academic office, student support services, and performance office. But then we also have an external team, advisory, that is actually looking at this work as well. And we also, and you might have been asked, we are also running some focus groups for student support services, families, students, leaders. So to pull all this information together so that we are making a very targeted, consistent, coherent MTSS guide. I also would like to let you know that this past year, we are very happy, and Carol is a part of this team, is that we have developed an MTSS social, emotional, behavioral advisory statewide. And that also has families, social support services on there, some of the RESC, some community providers, so and organizations. So we are really trying to have a continuous improvement model to ensure that we are addressing not only our students' needs, but also what is it that our staff needs, our educators need, as far as professional learning, technical assistance, and coaching. At the end of the day, we also have a writing team that we decided that we would go outside of the State Department and have some experts who are going to be doing the writing around MTSS. So we have folks who have expertise in SEB, or social emotional behavioral, and also academics. And the vision is to have this draft completed by the end of this school year, and then start having a rollout. It will not just be a guide. The guide will actually be uh, providing professional learning, technical assistance, and coaching. So it's not going to just be something that we're going to give to you and then provide you with no supports. Next slide. So I also want you to know, just to talk a little bit about Tier 3 and what Tier 3 is. Um, it is more individualized. Last time we really talked about Tier 2 supports, but what does that actually mean? So we have to have some kind of data or decision rule to decide that a student needs more support than Tier 2. Now, reminding you that even if a student is presented in Tier 3 for supports, they are still getting Tier 1 and they are still getting Tier 2 in addition to Tier 3 supports. And these are like our more high-risk students. So how does this impact workforce development and career pathways, you ask? Well, the reason is because we have to figure out the why. Like, why are our kids not engaged? Why are our kids not motivated to decide or plan a direction for post-secondary? And sometimes there are things that get in the way. Simple things like trauma can be an impact. Food insecurities. There are all these little things that get in the way. And sometimes our kids actually need to have some additional counseling, and that's okay. And I was just having a wonderful conversation with Carol about the fact that it's not what's wrong with our kids, it's really more of how can we help our kids. And it's a mind shift in that thinking. And you all know this because you're school counselors, so you all get this. There's no way that and I know many of you, and you are always advocating for students. And so what we need to have is more of a strength-based approach versus a deficit approach. Um, the other thing is individual student data and what data are we collecting in what context. And also, but remember when I said strength-based, we also want to know what our students' assets are, right? Because sometimes they may not even know what they are, and we have to help them find it so that they can start thriving and believing and having confidence. Um, and sometimes we have to look at these when we're doing supports for tier three, even though it's more intensified, we have to make sure that these are definitely aligned to what the actual need is. And I'll get into that a little bit more in the next slide. The other thing is that we have to ask ourselves some questions. So, are students receiving targeted or intensive supports, making the actual progress we plan on them making? And what does that actually look like? And sometimes do we have to like look at the adjustment of the level of intensity? So adapting, right? Dosage, so on and so forth, so that it is the right fit for that individual child because not everyone is when we think about tiered supports, it's about the individual student. It's not one size fits all. And then lastly, are interventions aligned to tier one practices and implemented with fidelity? And what is your measure to know that you're implementing with fidelity? And if you're not, the question is, why not? So going to the next slide. So one of the things that I hear a lot is really about how do we monitor? Like what is that process over time? And it is not a one person's job, it is a team's job, first of all. Um, and effective monitoring really I think it influences one, our decisions beyond the measurement, right? Because we're looking at the whole child. We're not just looking at numbers. And we really want to make sure that when we're thinking about the student, progress monitoring for MTSS should not only reflect growth, but it also should inform instruction and our instructional decisions. And that means that we want to ensure that the interventions and the interventions are responsive, are responsive to the individual student needs. So let me give you an example of that. While measuring students' growth is a critical, important component, it also is essential for districts to evaluate the effectiveness of that intervention being implemented. Because if it's working for one student, it might actually work for another. So you have that documentation. But moreover, you can measure growth over time. This includes analyzing the data. But one of the things that I find about this, which is very interesting, is then you can talk about less intensity, right? Because when we think of tier three, sometimes we're like, oh, that student is always going to be in tier three. But really our goal is to move and shift it back down to tier two and tier one. So we have to have those conversations about how we're going to do that. Next slide. So this is also some reflections to consider before I turn it over to Carol. So one is definitely has to be individualized, which I talked about one size does not fit all, but you have to really identify what is really happening with the student. So what is the skill deficit that we want to concentrate on so that we are very intentional rather than just concentrating on that they have bad behavior as an example. The other thing is data and progress monitoring, which I just talked about, so I don't have to go into detail into that, right? Are all staff implementing the plan consistently? When we're talking about reflection, Are we actually designing coherent systems that so if someone left tomorrow and went to for another job, those systems are still in place, not just for tier three, but for all tiers. You also want to look at intensity and frequency. Um, is this more of like I'll give an example of this. Do we want to do 30-minute, you know how we do that short-term counseling for students with IEPs or 504s? Or should it be longer, right? Or is this issue so sensitive and intensive that we might need to consult with our outside providers and connect the student and the family to an outside provider. So those are the kind of things that we have to think about. But also we have to think about how often are we going to be doing this and what is that intensity of that intervention. And then behaviorally, we just really want to talk about, what are the behavioral intervention plans that we are doing? Are they more preventative, early intervention, even in tier three versus a reactive intervention, which is very critical. And then also, again, I talked about this earlier, is about transition and fading the supports, back to, more tier two and tier one. That really is what our goal is. And some other things to consider. And lastly, is about functional behavioral assessments. I don't expect counselors to do this, so I'm just saying that this is another way for us to get a better picture of what's happening with the child by doing classroom observations, really talking to other individual teachers, talking to family members, so on and so forth, so that you can get a better picture of what works and what is not working for that particular child. And I'm going to stop there, Carol, and turn it back over to you. And if anyone has any questions in regards to Tier 3 supports, please do not hesitate to contact me directly.
Thank you so much. And I think that as we have conversations about the journey we've had together, starting with tier one for everybody, then we moved into tier two for some, and now looking at tier three for a few. Um, we think about and to underscore on what was just said is that we want everyone to live in tier one. And we know that sometimes they'll visit tier two and they'll visit tier three, but we really want to anchor them home to tier one. And I think that's the mindset that we work within in servitude of our students to meet their needs, and then we're able to bring the programming together in that way. So when we take a look, again, this framework is coming from the Connecticut School Counseling Framework, the guide from the State Department of Education, because they're giving us the roadmap and they're telling us, okay, so now in tier three, we're looking at chronic complex needs, and we all are familiar with the triangle, the green, the yellow, the red. And so some of us may be in systems or have worked in systems where that triangle is flipped upside down. And you might feel like you're working in chronic crisis or that there's always crisis happening. And what I would encourage us to do is really think about how we can flip the triangle and ensure that it's not upside down. The more tier one that we provide and programming we really intentionally focus upon, the more our students should and will live in tier one, and then we can move them to tier two. So if you're experiencing a lot of crisis, a lot of triage, as I call it, one of the things you want to look at is your systems for tier one and two, because the stronger that they are, the fewer students we should see in that red tier three category. And so we actually can have impact in what this looks like, and we can have impact and be the rock in the pond as to how we can make that change, sometimes by adding or tweaking something we're already doing, because all of y'all are already doing this incredible lift. So it's not adding more to your plate, it's tweaking maybe with some data or some changes based on the current practices. And so when we look at consultation and collaboration on the left-hand side, these are the things that we've been talking about, because we are a village. We work together. We don't work alone, and we don't want to work in a silo. And so these are the things that we're doing on the left-hand side. But one of the things that I wanted to underscore and talk about today in tier three is our systems. And for you to be reflective about what systems are working for you within your particular school or district, or what things you might want to introduce or potentially talk to your building leadership about, or your district leader about. And so we have a few different programs. I am quite sure you all have same and similar programming, probably with different names. We have what's called a Future Ready program. These are our students. We have about 100 students that are in high school in our Future Ready program. We have an AM and a PM shift. And these are our students who they themselves are parents, or they themselves are working to support their families. And so they are actually referred to this particular program by their AP and their school counselor at one of our 4 high schools. And if accepted in, they go to school for certain shifts during the week that work around their parenting schedule and work around their work schedule. So we're meeting their needs. One of the things that I do, and one of the things that I did when I was a high school counselor, I had those kiddos on my caseloads because I was their home high school. I went to my principal and I said, I really want to ensure that I'm serving my students who are off site, who are at this Future Ready program in another building. And I asked if I could go over quarterly and meet with my students, review grades, review all of the things that they're working on, their student success plan, looking at their plan of study, meaning their credits and where they are. And so I really wanted them to be able to meet with me as their home high school counselor, so that they would also have those supports. And I got a really quick, absolutely yes. And I would go over quarterly as a high school counselor and meet with them. And so now in my role, I go over to the Future Ready program as well. And I meet with the students and I provide workforce development to them based on their needs. So I student voice, ask them what they want to go into, what they're looking to do. I look at their post-secondary junior and senior surveys in terms of what they've designated their plan to be. And then I go over and I work to meet their plans for them by providing the resources, the action steps, and the steps to, for example, apprenticeship. So having a student who wants to be an electrician. So we sit and talk about, okay, these are the steps to apprenticeship and this is what it looks like. So providing in service that support. We also, so that's when I talk about SC, school counselor access to all students. We also have a Next Steps 18 to 22 program. These students are programmed into this particular program in our district through their IEP. So it is a placement within the district. It's not application based, and our students are educated to age 22. They are SPED students, and they actually go out. They have classroom time, but they also go out within our community and have designated internships where they're learning to work a cash register. They're learning maybe to do some laundry. They're learning different skills that will enable them to live independently if that's something that they're going to be doing, or if they're living at home, or maybe they're living in a particular place. And so this helps support them in that as well. And then transitioning for SPED, what does our transition for SPED look like when we think about grade to grade and year to year? Now, we always are top of mind is grade 5 to 6, and top of mind is grade 8 to 9, right? But for each of our SPED transitions, we're very strong in ensuring that during our SPED meetings, while the school counselors are part of that team, those transition meetings are happening. And there's certainly a lot of talk between 5 and 6 and 8 and 9, because we have school choice programming about the lottery and the schools that they have been applied to and where the student and family would like to go, and so on and so forth. So that's a strong embedded system within our SPED system. And something we're doing that is new this year. This is school counselor voice. The counselors have wanted articulation meetings that's kind of happening informally in pockets. And so this year I was able to formalize their articulation meeting. And what that means is they're going to come, school counselors will be at City Hall in May. So I designated a time and a space where we're going to meet in person, and our middle school counselors loop. So they start with 6th grade, they move with 7th and 8th, and they come back down to 6th. So we're going to start with our 8th grade counselors are going to meet with the 9th grade counselors, and they're going to go over their caseload and actually rotate seats and sit with each 9th grade counselor, so that the 9th grade counselor is able to discuss all of their incoming freshmen, what their needs are for 1, 2, and 3. And we're working on a protocol for that so that the meeting is purposeful, that the meeting is very beneficial. Then the high school counselors will leave and head back to the high school. And the eighth grade counselors who are there in the room loop down to sixth grade for next year. So they are going to stay. Our district has K-5 school counselors. Not everyone does. Then the fifth grade counselors will come in and we will run the same protocol for the fifth grade counselors so that the sixth grade counselors can learn about their new caseloads and student needs coming in. So that's something new this year that I'm really excited to implement. And if in your district this isn't something implemented, this is something you can do informally. So whatever grade level you may be in, whatever transition level you may be in, see if you're able to go to the other school or the other counselor is able to come to your school. You can meet virtually, but ask the questions of your district leader and or your building leadership to see if you can carve out time for these particular school counselor articulation meetings. As we transition now into our fair, just access and inclusion policies and practices, as per the guide, we look at our wraparound support, internal and community referrals. So who on the team, who are the people and services you call upon for tier 3? 2 years ago, we knew that we had wonderful partners in our schools. We have 21 schools in our district, and we couldn't really figure out who the partners were in each school. So one school might be working with Mid Fairfield Community Care Center, another one might be working with Positive Directions, and we never could really formalize that. We were able through the behavioral health pilot, and if you didn't participate in that, you don't need to, but we were able to identify and kind of resource map what was going on in the schools to provide better supports to and for our schools. And so if you take a very basic, you all know by now I love a really good Google sheet. So if you take a basic Google sheet and you just put in your partners, and I fancied this up for us a little bit, and I put the logos in for visual for us today. However, if you just do a basic Google sheet and you list the community partners, all of the partners you have in your school that you're aware of that the team works with, you can then kind of map out which schools have which particular partnerships. And again, you don't have to do this district wide. If you are in a school, you can just do this for your school. This can be an at the ready guide that you can share with the team so that people know who to turn to and who to call and who are the active partners in your school. And this work has been kind of a game changer for us because we knew we had strength in this area. We knew we were doing it, but we couldn't articulate it and we couldn't really say exactly who the partners were or where, I should say that. We couldn't say where they were. So this was really big for us. We looked at this in terms of our chronic absenteeism, our truancy, our behavioral incidents for parents and guardians, for faculty and staff. And again, a Google sheet. I think you can never go wrong with a nice Google sheet. What I love about it is that it's shareable. You can share it with your team. You can share it with building leadership, whomever you need to share it with. So then as we continue, we know our wraparounds support services differ from other service delivery strategies because it provides comprehensive youth and family-driven way of responding when there's mental health or behavioral challenges. It puts the youth and the family at the center of the process. So we've spent, this is our 5th session today, and we've spent a lot of time talking about student voice. So having that student and family voice as well is so important because we really feel that when the student and the family is at the center of the work, there's ownership, there's buy-in, there's a more positive outcome because we know that they're part of the team making the decisions. And that's really, really important. What we did was we developed something called Norwalk Helps. And this is just on the left-hand side, this is a linkable guide that it's on our website. It's also linked in your Google folders for you as well. We took the resources that we learned about in all of our schools and our 21 school areas, and we just put them in a guide with the help of IT, and they put them up on the internet. So this is a guide for parents, faculty, staff, students, and a resource for people. And we just basically took the partners that we work with and put them together in this particular guide. So with the support from a team of professionals and natural supports, the family and the student will help drive the work in a wraparound scenario. We talked about ownership. So there's even research of identified principles of a wraparound process, and that's included these 10 kind of components. Our family voice and choice, which we talked about, team-based, which we've covered, working in a team that the school counselor is part of a team. Natural supports, collaboration, community-based, culturally competent, individualized, strengths-based, unconditional, and outcome-based. And these are all the things that we know to be true, but that's been formalized in research. So then we talk about crisis management, which I touched upon before. If you're finding a lot of triage, you're finding a lot of crisis, something's feeling off. Well, we know that for students facing severe behavior, emotional, academic crisis, the typical supports cannot address. So we know that approximately 1 to 5% of students will need intensive intervention. And we talked about this is a place they're going to visit. We want them to live at home in tier 1. They may visit tier 2, they may visit tier 3, but always wanting to bring them home again to tier 1. So we know students will need intensive intervention to make progress toward and meet academic expectation. So we look at our tier 3 leadership team members. So now you're saying to yourself, well, who are our team members at the school level and who am I really working with? And most importantly, who should I be working with? We are all natural advocates as school counselors for our students and families, and we're also natural advocates for ourselves. And so it's important you work closely with building leadership to advocate for what your needs are. And so when you look at your team members, your behavioral expertise representative, your school administrator, your tier 3 interventionist, and then the support team, including personnel with a problem-solving knowledge. So for example, if you have a student who has a very high trauma score or is steeped in trauma, bringing in that outside provider that specializes in trauma, and it can be a particular subset of trauma. And so really making the right match and that support can be critical in the positive outcome. Also, too, on the support team, our school administrators, our student and family members and guardian, and our intervention providers. And so bringing in the correct people. So understanding and knowing that if you're having some type of medical crisis, knowing that it's going to be imperative that the nurse is part of that team for that medical piece as well. So these are just things to reflect upon about when our students are visiting tier 3, what their needs could be, and getting the right people. In the room at the right table. So we've really talked a lot about tier 3. We'd really love to hear about your reflection, something maybe that you're working on, something you're thinking about, something that's working for you in tier 3, or maybe your tier 3 challenge that you're experiencing. So I've said a lot of different types of things that we'd really love to hear from you. So please feel free to go into the chat and ask a question or make a statement, as well as the question and answer section, because we'd really like to dialogue with you about what you're experiencing. In full disclosure, I am a school counselor with horrible wait time. So that's why I put myself on mute. So I'm just going to try to work on my wait time.
Also, you can come off mute if you don't want to be in the chat. You can actually just come off mute. Also, don't forget about the Q&A, because if you don't want to be identified because of your question for whatever reason, you can do that in the Q&A section and not have to be identified as well. I do actually have some resources for you that Carol was talking about. But before I put those into the chat, I just wanted to know, what do you think about, Carol, do you mind backing up the slides a little bit about your help resource? Um, I don't, this is an amazing resource. I wish we could actually go online to actually show folks how, what it looks like internally.
I will
Maybe we
grab
can
that
just,
while you're
yeah, and
talking.
maybe
I'll
we
grab
can
it.
just grab the link and put that in there, um, because it's really well done. I'll just ask a question. Counselors who are on the call, do you have something like this, like a resource, referral, like booklet, guide that's posted online for families and for students? You can just say yes or no or thumbs up. Not that I'm aware. Anyone else?
Has the screen
Not
changed?
formally. Our social worker has. Oh, okay. Thanks, Kathy.
Has the screen changed to the guide? Can you see it?
Yes, it did. Thank
Excellent.
you.
So this is simply posted on the website as you think about your questions and things you want to share. I'm going to show you. We have English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole as those are our predominant languages in the district. And so we click on English. And this was actually assembled. I'll tell you all the secrets from a Google sheet, which I know you're not surprised to learn that. So this was all information inputted into a Google sheet. And then we were able to partner with communications and IT. And they were able to go ahead and create this little booklet for us. So now you have these particular supports that are named. And so you have people going right to this guide. And I'd like to offer that this guide is free and open to the public. And so sometimes while you may not be near Norwalk, you might see a particular resource that you're like, if I could have that resource, reach out to that resource and see if they have somebody like a brother or sister program in your town, because they may well have that. So this is a free and open resource to the public and anyone. It's posted on our website. So please feel free to utilize this resource.
And Carol, talk a little bit about that. This wasn't something that you did in silos, but
Right.
it was a team effort. And then also about how the updates happen.
Right. So this was actually all of the information we pulled together when we started to look at where our resource, we did resource mapping, where are our resources living. And so this was a shared document amongst quite a few personnel in the district where we were able to connect with our school partners to input this. And then we were able to put it in the Google Sheet, and communications was able to format that with us. And so as there are updates made to this, we would get the updates over to communication and they would update what is posted for us on the website. So this may look overwhelming and this may look like, oh, this really cute thing. And I don't know if you can hear the pages turn. That's like one of my favorite parts is it makes a little noise when the pages turn, but I don't want anyone to be overwhelmed by this because you don't have to make this. It's really about the Google sheet of information. And it's the information you work in every day. It's the people you partner with. It's the people you call. It's whom you email. So you have all this information at your fingertips. And so, maybe a Google sheet and connect in with your building leadership or someone in the district as well.
I think it's easier to unmute if it's okay. I'm just
Of
curious about the
course.
documentation portion of it, right? So I feel like we're regularly referring students to outside resources. Counselors are certainly shouldering like a lot of the tier 3 in the building with the, weekly check-ins or daily check-ins and counseling sessions. And if anybody has like a really good framework for documentation, as to what that's looking like. I feel like really getting all of that down in a way that it just could be passed to another counselor if they walked out the door outside of personal notes and record keeping. Does anyone have anything that they're using in that way to kind of document the way tier 3 is being delivered?
So
I can
Kathy,
speak to that, but I'd love to hear from our group to see
yeah.
what types of things that you're using. Great question.
And also if you can share it with Kathy as well, so that she can have a physical document to review it. And Carol, would you mind putting the link in the chat as well for everyone?
Yes.
So, and also you probably want to I don't think anyone's responding. I don't have any chat. So Carol, do you want to just go ahead and respond to Kathy's question?
Yes. And so what we do, Kathy, we use Power School for everything because it's a holistic 30,000-foot view. So while we don't have specialty paperwork, which I love your idea about how it's documented or what system, because Power School is K to 12 continuum, that's why we use Power School. So whatever we're doing tier 1, 2, 3 in terms of the school counselor work and other work as well, it's documented in Power School because everyone can see it. And so that's a place where we're all able to go to and say, this has been done, this has been done, but wait, this hasn't been done and that hasn't been done when the team comes together to review that. So from that perspective, really Power School has been the best way that we've found so far, but I'm certainly love to learn about anything else anyone else may be doing or they find to be um,
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
I apologize, Kathy. Isabel, I think, put something in the chat. Isabel, can you come off mute for just a second? I haven't seen you in such a long time. It's good, so good to see your name up there. And to put you on the spot, by the way. Is she still on, Isabel? Okay, so she looks like she's still, oh, there she is. Hi. Oh, you're on mute still. Oh, she said you won't be able to hear me speak. Okay, got it. Okay, so Isabel is saying that Danbury Public Schools has something similar. I'm assuming, are you saying similar to what Kathy is asking for or similar to what Carol was recommending? What, oh, Carol was showing. Okay, got it. So, Kathy, can I ask a follow-up question? How are you, by the way? It's good to see you. Long time no see. Um, uh, I'm wondering, like, are you looking for something where you're documenting individual students, or are you looking for something to look at, like what you have for tier 1, 2, and 3, as far as supports, interventions, so on and so forth? Or are you looking for something that is just a list of resources? I'm trying to figure out exactly what
Yeah,
you're
no,
looking
I'm
for.
thinking about documenting for individual students, and what that really it like with Fidelity. Each counselor is kind of managing their own load with that, with tier three for sure. And we have some like MTSS, but I just feel like it could be cleaner. It's something I could even work on probably developing, but there are instances where, I wasn't thinking about providing resources to a family necessarily as tier three, but in reality, that is a tier three intervention, even if we're not delivering, but we're connecting them with community resources. So that is not always someone who has necessarily gone through MTSS, but they're kind of maybe they're managing in school, okay, but the family is like, in a bit of crisis, there's something going on, and we're providing this extra tier of support. But I wasn't really necessarily looking at that as tier three, but in reality, it is, right? And then the counselor kind of checking in. So a lot of that happens informally before because it's not necessarily having a major impact, but we know it's going on. So they're coming in during their free periods just to talk. But their grades are still good. They're not having there's no data point for us other than what they're sharing based on a relationship with the counselor. So I'm like, should we somehow be capturing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the other data isn't saying this is a student rising to the top. It's really them coming self-reporting.
So I do know that so we have something called a portal. The funding came through CT SEDS, MTSS.
Hmm.
And it is actually a portal where I'm a part of that team where we're looking at I concentrate on the SEB part. And what it does is we actually have looked at evidence base for tier 2 and tier 3. And what does that actually look like? So a couple of things. One is that I can share that information with you, Kathy. Number two is that a lot of districts are still using Google Drives to record this information. The third thing is, so if you want to, that we have like 44 districts that are participating in the portal for MTSS for free. So it's something I can actually put in the chat. And maybe your district can have a conversation with, her name is Dr. Erin Dunn. She's from East Con, and she's fabulous. And the concentration on SEB, you can actually input your information on what you're doing with individual students in that portal. So I'll put her contact information in the email for you so that I'm sorry, in the chat for you so that you can actually make contact with her. She's fantastic. You can let her know that I was the person that sent you, but it's a possibility that your district might want to go in this direction because it does really help organize all the things that are happening, but more importantly, it's communication. It's communication. So we're not doing the same thing over and over again, but also we're like, okay, what's working, what's not working? And so that's data. That's rich data. So definitely, I will pull that up for you.
And one of the things I wanted to share is you talked about with fidelity, which is really the key. One of the things that in the beginning, when I stepped into this role, school counselors knew I was a really heavy documenter. They knew that I documented everything in Power School. So I said to the counselors, K to 12, I said, even if you have a little notebook, oh, I guess you can't see it because of my background. I'm holding up like a little notebook. There you go. I'm holding a little notebook. And even if they're logging, who they've met within a day, they can do their Power School log entries at the end of the day. They can do them a few days later if that day has been so hectic and they've been with mobile crisis all day. Just keep a little running ledger at your desk. It's a strategy that's really been very successful for us because then they go in and do log entries. And I'll tell you, the counselors will log entry every check-in because a check-in will show cadence and a check-in will show a holistic view. And so to your point, how do you show that we know that this is happening, but they can, and I tell them, don't even make a big narrative. In fact, don't write a narrative. You don't have to. I say to them, the art of the strategy is just using the title. So if you use the title the same for every student you meet with and you say academic support, and my memory is not the best, so I might put academic support, and then in the narrative, I write math. I write algebra 2. I write, support. So I use my title really as that because then you do the logs so quickly. I wanted to share another screen briefly to see if this would be a valuable resource. I created this for our school counseling team, K to 12, and it is a school counselor Power School log entry how-to. And it's a step-by-step small guide on how to go ahead and do log entries. And so you'll see, the log title could be group counseling, it could be individual counseling, it could be attendance, it could be parent contact, and that tells the entire story. It doesn't have to be what the conversation was, but that tells the story of cadence and fidelity when we look at that student, all of us as a team holistically. And this is something that I can add to the Google Drive if we feel that this could be something valuable that you can use or share with your colleagues.
And also, Carol, this is great. Also, I would add I'll give you the information in the chat from EastCon regarding the MTSS so that we can also put that in the Google Drive for everyone. I wanted to also think about, we're talking a lot here about interventions and how do we know that whatever we're doing is like really working or not working? And also, how do we like identify where our gaps are in a systemic way? So I'm going to put two resources. I mean, I could literally do a separate workshop on both of these items, but I think it might be helpful for you to be able to, one, identify existing programming and is it working? Before you decide to try something new, find out why it's not working. Is it the training? Is it the implementation? Whatever the case may be. But because sometimes we get initiative fatigue and we get overload and also data decision making fatigue, right? Because we have to make so many kind of decisions talking to so many different people. And I think it gets lost in translation of what we actually are trying to do as counselors. So let me just put a couple of those things. So the first thing that I'm going to put in there is called the hexagon tool. Some of you may be familiar with this because we have been doing trainings on this at the State Department in regards to the hexagon tool, but we actually look at, what is the need, number one? What is the evidence that we are going to actually work with? Is it evidence-based, that program? Is it fit for our kind of community, for our school setting, so on and so forth? And the supports. But more importantly, where are your gaps so that you can identify those gaps and have an opportunity to work around those gaps or over those gaps, or reposition yourself with funding and human capital to actually be able to implement it well. So all those things come into play. Oh, thank you. So, and this is really important because sometimes we have, so I go on site visits and I'll ask, so tell me a little story about what programs or what are you utilizing, for tier one, two, and three. And some folks are really confused, not because they aren't paying attention, it's just because they're not sure what's what anymore. I had one district actually say, I think we're doing PBIS, but I think we just added restorative, right? So those are the kind of things where we need, and we're doing ruler. And, so all these things come into play, and we get a very, very heavy lift on all the training that we have to do. And it can be very complicated. And that's not building coherent systems. More isn't always better, you know? And then I said two things, right? So you remember when we were talking about resource mapping? So when it comes to mental health, um, this is a tool that I've been using in regards to understanding, not only what we have internally, but also what do we have externally and who's responsible for what and when. And if we have funding for this particular project, how much funding do we have and how much does it, and will it last so that we don't get onto that fiscal cliff and fall off, where we don't have the supports anymore. Thank you, Carol, so much. And the SHAPE assessment was part of, I think Carol had mentioned earlier about the behavioral pilot. This is part of that. We are going to be continuing that, the behavioral health pilot. And we're going to actually have a focus this year on rural districts for through the rural grant. The federal grant is called Rural Health Transformation Project. And Connecticut got $154 million per year. And then the State Department, there's 9 agencies that are participating, and the SDE got 3.8 million per year for the next 5 years. So you will see more information coming out in regards to that. Okay, so any other questions, concerns, comments? So I'm going to ask another question. And again, you can come off mute or if you want to put it into the chat. But I'm really interested. We did a 5-part series on this. We're wondering if you are, I mean, we don't really have evaluation forms, but we would like your feedback to say, should we do this again next year and continue this work? And your feedback would be really helpful right now to let us know if this is something that you would like us to continue on with. Thank you. Thank you, Kath, Madeline, Isabel. Wonderful. That's great. Anyone else? We have 1 minute left. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure and so much fun. I always like to make connections with the counselors, so this brings me joy. So thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And Carol,
Thank
you're amazing. Thank you.
Oh, you're amazing. Thank you so much for co-facilitating and creating this environment where we could, work directly with the counselors. This has been so wonderful. And thank you to all the counselors for all the work that you do every day, day in and day out. I know that I'm a little biased. I think this is the hardest job ever, and we thank you for everything you do in service of our students and family and everyone, faculty, staff, everyone. We serve everyone, right? And so thank you for everything. I just want to put a little reminder that I've invited everyone to the drop-in that's coming up. I put it in the chat, date and time. It's going to be this week. If you have not received an invitation and you'd like to be there, please put your email in the chat and I will be sure to invite you. And this is going to be a session and chance for us to just talk in group or one-on-one about the things you're thinking about, what you want to build, and kind of technical assistance or any type of support that you may want or need in any way. So thanks again for everything, and we'll see you all soon.
And Carol, I have one email address for you for the drop-ins.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Everyone, thank you so much. Take care.